Hey everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Design Cinema. This is Feng Zhu speaking, and we are at episode 105 after another few months of not recording anything new. That's because I've been swamped with a lot of work. Due to the lockdown, a lot of studios have been using this time to basically get all their pre-pro stuff out of the way, scripts, concept art, whatever that's in the early stages of planning. So they're using this time to get it all done. So hopefully after the lockdown is over, they could go straight into production. So that's been eating up a lot of my time. But today I thought I gotta take some time out to record a new episode, and here we are. So time management. So this is something that I actually just talked to our students about a few days ago, because I do find that a lot of students fall into a bad time management trap. Now today I'm not going to be talking about procrastination. Okay, that's a whole other thing. Basically, if you're playing games, you rather be on social media, you rather play on their phone and doing anything else, well, that means you're not really serious about doing this. So I'm not going to be talking about don't play games and do that. That's something for you to manage on your own. I'm talking about if you're actually sitting down to do work, how do you manage the time on a particular project? And that's what we'll be going over today. Okay, so let's jump right in. Let's turn this off. Okay. So we're going to be doing a pretend project. Let me write some stuff down before I show you guys the charts here, okay? By the way, I'm still going to do this classroom format. I think a lot of you find this to be quite helpful. So I'm not going to edit anything for now. Just going to go through and talk to you guys about it. Now, there are going to be some parts of this video that's going to be sped up as I show you the how I do these sketches. But other than that, we'll just do it exactly like we're in a classroom environment, okay? So for our students, because they are students, we don't put a lot of pressure on them to do a ton of homework, but we put something that's industry relevant. That means you cannot be too slow. For example, you cannot produce one drawing a month. That is impossible to get a work if you're working that slow. So we got to give them something that's reasonable, that's manageable. So most cases, we give them something like let's just do a design. Okay, let me write this out. Okay. Doesn't matter if this is a character, a prop, an environment. Basically a line drawing, pretty nicely done. Perhaps use some 3D. Basically a locked package. Okay, a single drawing at the end of it. Okay, let's just say one drawing. Or design. Let me write a little bit better here. Okay, it's pretty cold in my office today. So, okay, so one drawing. So the average we give to students is about 3 days. 1, 2, 3, okay, or 2.5 is doable. Okay, now sometimes it'll take longer for them to finish this. For example, the project is they're earlier in their term, but by the time they get to about term 3, they had about almost 7 months or so of instruction, so they can handle this type of project. Well, at least most can. However, some still fall into the bad time management, because on this average, this gives you about 8 images a month. Okay. So in about 2 months time, they could get about 16. So in a whole term, they could get anywhere between 20 to 25 images. So if they're well done, that's enough for a portfolio. So that's the goal we try to aim for. So using this 3 days goal, let me break down how we manage that schedule. So day 1. All right, so let me change my pen to red. Okay, and let me talk about this in detail. Okay, so this is day 1, and actually today's entire episode will be focusing on day 1, because this is actually the most important part that you want to manage your time on. Day 2 and day 3 is much easier, and you will see why. Okay, so let me go through this real quick. So you can see here, I put a little rough chart here, got 10 a.m. all the way to about 7 p.m. and you got to see some icons and so forth, right? So let me go through each step here. So I get to work about 10 a.m. So you could start your day on whatever you think you're most productive. So this chunk of time, okay, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., roughly about 5 hours or so, is my most productive time zone. This means my brain is the most active. Okay, at my age now, maybe when I was younger, maybe I have a little bit more time, maybe 8 hours, but not at my age now, I find myself to be pretty much burnt out by the end of 5 hours. Now, not physically burnt out, but mentally. So I could only think for about 5 hours. Okay, that's inclusive maybe a half an hour lunch in between here. So before I start a design project, I want to make sure that I want to use this 5 hours really efficiently. That means the night before, you want to get plenty of sleep. You want to not get too stressed out. Don't go to social media. Don't read too much news. Don't do anything, right? You want to be in a design phase for this 5 hours. Because the reason why I put the brain here is because your brain actually burns a lot of calories while you're doing this. Okay, even though you're not moving, it's burning a ton of calories because of all the thinking. But this is actually the hardest part of all the 3 days. And this is where most students sometimes mess up, because they spend these 5 hours doing something else. For example, maybe doing reference gathering. Maybe they do a sketch. Maybe they're trying to figure out some details. None of that stuff is that important right now. What we want to do in this first 5 hours is to do super rough sketches to get your ideas out. So if our goal is for a single design at the end of 3 days, we want to use this time to do as many thumbnails as you can, whatever it takes to get that design out. Okay, these drawings could be super dirty, it doesn't have to be clean, they're not showable to anybody, they're just for yourself. So what you want is to use your brain as much as possible. So your brain is working faster than your hands. Okay, that means things like fundamentals, that means drawing nicely. Who cares at this point? Because we don't want to stop you from being creative at this stage, okay? So after the 3 p.m. is over, then you take a quick rest. This part here is still continuing to be rough, but we have a goal in mind. The goal here is to take the thumbnails you have, whatever you have by say 3 p.m., okay, after the 5 hours, pick the one you think is gonna be good, okay? Even if you don't find any that's the best that you want to do, I recommend at least pick one, because the goal here is to get something done at the end of 3 days. Don't push it off to 4 days, 5 days, or maybe never, okay? It's better to have something done, start another design, get that done, start another design, get that done, because at least you have a high number. And by having a high number, you will learn to manage your time better, for example. You will also get a lot of confidence, and you also get better by each image you do. The worst thing you could do is not do anything or not finish anything. So if you have some thumbnails by the end of your 5 hours, pick the best one, okay, the best of the bunch, and start roughing that thing out with a little bit more detail. But day one is never about the finished image. Day one is about getting all your ideas done. So the other thing we want to do is lock the camera. And all this, by the way, I'll show you guys in today's, you'll see in the part 2 here. So, but locking the camera is important because we are in pre-pro here. Pre-pro means this design that you're going to do or pitch at the end of 3 days might not even get approved. Okay, that's the life of a concept artist. Okay, what we do is so early on that maybe 70% of what you do is not approved for going forward. So at this point, we don't want to be spending so much time figuring out so much details if this drawing or this design is not going to go forward. So locking the camera essentially allows you to just figure everything out on camera. For example, if you have a building, if you don't see the roof, don't worry about it. You don't see the back view of this building, don't worry about it. You don't see the underneath of a roof, don't worry about it. Those details will come in after this design is approved. Okay, so let me just draw a little quick chart here to show what I mean. Okay, this whole thing is pre-production. Right, pre-pro. However, even in pre-production, there are phases. Right now, we are here. Okay, so sometimes I call this pre-production, because there's nothing here. We're after a blue sky design. After that design reaches here, then you have pre-production. Okay, this is where you take that design that's approved and start doing things like variations, right? You're doing things like orthos. You're basically in this completely ready, Mr. T here, orthos. Like these are 3D turnarounds, like front, back, and those kind of views. Okay, variation means you take the whole the design you have and maybe change the windows, or if you're doing a character design, maybe change the clothes a few times, change it to different variants, right? But that's after the initial design is locked. So all this stuff is pre-production to get it ready into production, meaning it's going to go to a 3D artist to build into a model, where if it's on a film, you go into the costume department, they're going to build it into actual clothing for the actors, for example, right? So right now we're here, we're in pre-pre, okay? Pre-pre means we want to get as many ideas out as possible in the shortest amount of time, because again, maybe 70% of your drawings will be thrown away. And that is completely common in the industry we're working in. We're not doing final drawings every time we start. We don't have the mindset of, let me sit down, do this design, and it's going to get approved. It doesn't work that way, because our job is really to find the design. So that means high output, short amount of time. Okay, so and that's why we're talking about time management. Okay, so locking camera early on is pretty critical, because sometimes I find students to be designing details way too early. They're doing things, for example, trying to figure out the buttons on a glove and all these kind of things before they get to the final drawing. They're still on day one, but they're now doing very tiny details before they even figure out the initial drawing. Okay, so why is this important, right? Why is day one so important? Because you see here, go home feeling confident. So if you plan your schedule out correctly, by the end of day one, you should have pretty much what you want to do for the next 2 days. So that means all your stress is now gone. Okay, the hardest thing to deal with as a concept designer is to not know what to design. Now you come in day one and you have nothing. You day two, you have nothing. And more as that time gets eaten away, the higher the stress is going to start to build. So what I want to do is I want to put all that stress on my first day. So that way, by the time I'm 7 p.m., I go home, I know exactly what I'm going to do for day two and day three. So, and this is something I found out just through my experience of doing this for such a long time. In the early parts of my career, I wasn't that efficient at doing this. So oftentimes, say the art director give me something on Monday, I will just struggle on the first day and start figuring out little details. And by Tuesday, now I'm starting to get a little nervous because I still don't have a final design yet. And by end of Tuesday, I'm still kind of struggling with design, but I know that this thing is due Friday morning. And now by Wednesday, I'm really stressed out because I have to now finish something in the next 2 days, but I still don't have a design. So slowly, I start to teach myself, okay, day one, super important. I want to concentrate. I don't want to talk to too many people. I want to listen to my music and just get the hardest stuff out of the way. And I don't end my day until I have those things done. Because what it is that it makes my day two and day three super, super relaxed. Okay, so what is day two? Okay, so here comes day two. Let me write some notes here. So day two, you're going to take that rough sketch of yours and you're going to clean some stuff up. So cleanup is not still towards your final. This is a drawing meant for yourself. This means your secondary details come in, your little tiny refinements start going in, but this is not part of your final drawing. This is just cleanup. So this is the time I'm going to use to figure stuff out. So there are some stress here, okay, about maybe 2-3 hours of it. But this drawing is still rough. This is not showable as the final. So you could relax. Your lines can be pretty sketchy, as you guys will see later, okay? So, but if you're done by say noonish, the rest of your day is pretty much done. So now you go into the actual polish of a drawing, okay? Either you want to build that in 3D and paint on top of it. We're going to start just cleaning up the line drawing. That's up to you. But now you have pretty much most of the day to do that. So notice I put a little hand icon here. This is just muscle memory stuff. So right now, if you're a student and learning at home, this might be quite hard. Like drawing something might be difficult. But trust me on this. In a few years, 3 to 5 years from now, the drawing part is not hard, or not that hard anymore. The most difficult is this thing here, your thinking. Right? That's why I put it early in the day. So the more you spend or more time you spend in this business, you'll find that the muscle memory becomes easier and easier over time. So that's why I said this stuff here is pretty much low stress. At this point, you can listen to podcasts, you can listen to music, you can even chat with your buddies. So in the art department, we get pretty rowdy, pretty noisy by day two or day three. So because everyone's pretty much done with their initial hardcore thinking part, now we're just polishing, we're just drawing, and this stuff doesn't take that much concentration at all. So by day three is nothing but refinement. Okay, so here's day three. So you're talking about just the whole day spent polishing. So again, you can listen to music, just chill, because you're just doing, wood grain and drawing grass, you're doing cloth, whatever the little detail comes in, but your brain is pretty much at rest at this point. So I actually use this time to start thinking about the next design if I'm on a project or my mind is wandering off thinking about other stuff. I'm not really thinking about the design anymore because the design was done on day one. Okay, so this is something that took me a few years to figure out, but nowadays I'm trying to give this to students so they could start to learn this process early on. However, I do want to say that the production pipeline is pretty much, there's no rule about it. You have to find your own efficiency. So when I was younger, my time was not on this schedule. My time was actually starting say 10 p.m. and I worked till 3 a.m., right? So my days was reversed, but the production schedule is still similar to the way it's laid out here. All right, so this is, let's take a look at this one more time. Let's just quick review. So day one is the key. Okay, you want to spend that time as much as possible getting all your designs out, rough as possible, sketchy drawings, whatever that takes. It's not shown to anybody, so this is totally relaxed. Just sketch some stuff out. The goal is to go home on day one knowing what you'll be finishing on day 2 and day 3. All right, so for this project, we'll be doing a similar to what our students are doing right now. They're doing a term 3 project in which they take some books that we recommended and going to design a couple of sets, couple of characters, and couple of props. So I'm doing the exact same thing. So I picked one of the books that they're doing, which is Upon a Prophecy. This is the book 1 of the by David Eddings. Really cool book, pretty old. I read this back in when I was in high school. That was the early 90s, so a long time ago. But I really like this book a lot. It's kind of a very standard fantasy fare. So I'll be doing a Faldor's farm here. Let's not talk too much about the design here. It's just a farm, but I'll go through quickly about what it is. But since this is a time management episode, I'm not going to get into design talking too much. But what it is that it's a pretty fantasy world. However, it's probably you're talking about a farm with a main house. It has about 60 people that can eat inside. It has obviously a big kitchen for them to make all the food for everybody there. The land is pretty big, but we're today only gonna concentrate on the main house. Okay, so that's our design spec, and let's leave it at that because we'll have other episodes to talk about design thinking and all that kind of stuff. Today is just about doing the first step of day 1. Okay, so usually I have some ref. Now I do want to talk about ref because noticed. Let's go back to my schedule here. Notice on day 1, I don't have a place here for reference gathering. So you might think, hey, that's kind of weird. Why are you going to spend time gathering references? Well, this is also a trap that I often see our students doing. They start the day all fresh, just sat down in their chairs, and then they're going to do reference all day. That is something that you should probably do in your off hours, because reference is something that eats up a lot of time, but it actually doesn't do anything for your final product because the clients are not going to look at your reference images. You can't say you spent 3 days doing references and then they say, hey, where's my design? And you go, well, I have a few hundred reference images. They're not going to pay you for that, and no one's going to like you if you spend all your time doing reference. So when do you do reference gathering? Well, if you know a project is coming up, then what I generally do is I do this about nighttime when I get home. Maybe I'm watching YouTube, I'm watching some documentaries, whatever it is, because reference doesn't take any brain power at all. It's literally just clicking buttons on your mouse and going to various websites and just saving a bunch of images. So if I know a fantasy project is coming up, for example, this one here, then at nighttime, I'll just go through a couple websites, go to Pinterest, Tumblr, or whatever your favorite reference gathering websites are, and just start saving images you think is going to help you to get this project going. So that way, when I start my official day 1, I'm not spending any time gathering references, because in the real world, the clients don't pay for that time. You cannot go to them and go, hey, I'm going to charge you for 3 days of work, but this 3 days is reference gathering. They're not going to pay for that because they got nothing, right? You got a bunch of references that you might actually use for other projects, but they got nothing. So clients only pay for the time they're actually doing their work. So I take reference kind of out of the equation here, and that's pretty important for students because sometimes they spend like 2-3 days on just reference gathering and not draw anything, even though they have great references, but that's useless because we cannot look at references and go, oh wow, your project is awesome because you have a bunch of images from the internet. You have to actually sit down and do your own designs off of that. Okay, so here's some just really quick references I put down for this farm. Pretty standard fare. Again, I'm not going to talk about design too much here. Let's just do a pretty cool fantasy farm. Let's just set it at that. That's what this episode is about. So this is sort of the feeling I want to get, kind of this rustic, pretty big size farm. There's a lot of people in there, but I don't want to look so standard. It has to exist in a fantasy world of some kind. So these are images that sort of inspires the feeling that I want, but obviously these are all real world. I want to take it just a little bit more fantasy on top of that. Okay, so from here on, let's jump into a sped up video that I did earlier today. So in real time, the video you're about to see took about 2.5 hours. So that's a little bit less than the 5 hours that I talked about earlier, but essentially what I'm going to show you guys after this is I'm going to go through this entire thing, right? We're going to end here. But in real time, it took him about 2.5 hours. But if you're doing this at home or learning in school, you can spend a whole 9-10 hours on it and try to reach the same goal at the end of it. All right, so I'll see you guys on the fast forward part here. All right, so now we are in the fast forward section of the video now. So what I'm gonna do is gonna show you guys pretty much the first day results. Okay, it's obviously fast forwarded, but here's what we're trying to do. So you can see here I'm starting with a very quick thumbnail. So remember earlier I talked about you want to work faster than your brain could think, right? So because you want your brain to be at the forefront and your arms just to catch up. So therefore, look at this. I'm just drawing a side view, and this farm design is pretty standard. I'm using this time really just to warm my hands up, and I'm using a very standard design so that way my brain can start thinking, can start getting familiar with the shapes, get comfortable drawing this. But this time might not be the design I use, but at least it's something on paper, right? So very quickly I move to sketch number 2. And by now your muscles are warmed up, the forms are starting to read, but still just side view. Okay, and this is super important because sometimes students use this to start drawing perspective and all these difficult things that's hard to do, and they're getting caught up in the fundamentals, right? Even though fundamentals is so important, you don't want to be caught up in it that early. You want to use this time to just think, okay, forms, shapes, cool ideas, those things you want to get out. So here you can see I'm starting to find this, and by the time I got to the second sketch, I go, hey, this farm looks too small. You know, we have to sit like 60 people here. So I start to extend it. And by doing this, I start to find a good selling point, which is like this kind of almost L shape or U shape design. And I start to like the way this is going. However, these designs here still look kind of, how should I say, kind of standard, right? They got the kind of the Western Europe look to it. They don't feel that fantasy. They feel still a little bit medieval-ish, right? Kind of historic. So you'll see that I will start tweaking that as we go forward here, okay? All right, so here's sketch 3. So now my arms are really warmed up, still doing side view, no stress in terms of fundamentals, and now I'm working with better forms now, okay, and better proportions. And keep in mind, nobody sees these. Okay, these thumbnails are just for you. Okay, in a school environment, we do have to check the students' thumbnails to help them design better. But in the real world, at least most clients I work with, they don't care about the thumbnails. They only want the final design that you pitch to them. Okay, something you'll see, for example, at the end of day 3. So this kind of stuff is just for you. So whatever it takes to get a design out, do it. Okay, so rough drawings, side view, top view, plan view, little chicken scratches, napkin sketches, you know, quick doodles on your iPad, doesn't matter. Okay, nobody cares about this drawing. This is just for you. So that takes a lot of stress out of the drawing and puts all the pressure onto your brain, the thinking part. And you can see here I'm tweaking, I'm constantly erasing to try to find the form. And Photoshop is great for that because it allows you to edit stuff so quickly. Okay, so but I'm trying to find something in this sketch, I could already feel it. So if this is for example, 4 hours, right? We're talking about 5 hours from 10 a.m. to about 3 p.m. here. Sometimes if I do find the sketch early on, I might just go for it. I'll stop doing thumbnails. But for this particular demo, I'm gonna try to fill the page and just do another drawing based on this idea here. But in the real world, I will probably stop already because this design, I think is pretty cool already. I could see it in my head of how this is gonna look like in perspective. So in that case, I could just move on to the next stage. But here we'll continue doing one more just to fill the page out with another drawing here. All right, but I like where this is going. The forms are friendly. This place, since I read the book, I do want to capture a little bit of the feeling, which is this is where our lead character grows up in. It's a very safe environment. It's very homey, I guess. So I want this to have soft forms, big safe shapes like big roofs, nice soft materials, very warm materials like wood, hay, and these kind of things, just to capture that warmth of a nice farm. Okay. All right, so here's the last sketch I'll do here using this side view, and this is based on the drawing I just done, drawing number 3. Now you can see how loose these drawings are, right? It's just so loose because at this point the arms are completely warmed up, and this is something you'll take you guys maybe quite a while to get to, but try to do it. And the way to get here is by drawing a lot. Okay, drawing one sketch is not going to get you here. You got to draw hundreds of sketches to get to here, in which you're so comfortable with the pen on the canvas that your brain is telling your hand how to move the forms. You're no longer thinking about, oh, this drawing, this line's not good, or this form's not good. You're completely on autopilot and your brain is just taking over. So to get to that, just keep drawing. And that's why this stage here, to just generate thumbnails, be as loose as possible, be as free as possible is super important. You don't want to be tied down. You want to get natural at sketching, at thinking. Okay. All right, so you can see this design here is pretty similar to drawing number 3. Okay. So the way this works is that we got this huge, well, sports cars going by. We have this huge building on top with a empty, I guess, a hollow point in the middle. So I thought that looked kind of cool. And we want to put a little tower here. I'm not going to talk about design too much in this episode, which I mentioned earlier, because this is a time management episode. So, but briefly speaking, it's a U-shaped form with a tower, so that way we could see this farm from a little bit further distance, because this farm it is the center of this area in the book. So a lot of people come by and they stay there for a few months. They work on the farm, they eat, they all kind of take part on the work. So we do want this to be a pretty inviting place and something that's also identifiable from a distance. All right, so here I put a little bridge in there as well. I thought that's kind of cute to put some water in here. Just all the things that warm stuff up, even plants, greeneries. These are all things that signal to your brain that this is not a dangerous place. This is a friendly place. All right, and also since this is where a kid is growing up, I do want this this place to feel pretty nooks and cranny-ish, like a lot of places to hide, a lot of places to explore. And also this farm is quite old, so I want to make this place look like it's been there for a while, and a lot of things are added on. So maybe they started with a single building, then they added another building, and then they added the L shape on top there, and just continue building this out as time went forward. All right, so here I'm taking the first drawing I did. You saw the kind of standard farm, and adopting the new design language on top of this one. So this is something I do often, because as you get warmed up, you don't have to sacrifice your first drawing, right? You have the forms there, so maybe you could just build right off of it. So here I just did a simple sketch based on the initial drawing. So my first drawings are generally pretty stiff because it's 10 in the morning, you just got into work, your muscles just don't have the literal heat in it. It's not warmed up, right? So those drawings become stiff. But by 2-3 drawings in, your arms, your muscles start to flow really nicely, and so I go back and sometimes fix up the initial drawings. Okay. So if you're learning at home right now, so this time I advise you to just concentrate, find some very comforting things to surround you with. Okay, that could be music, that could be coffee, that could be your work environment, whatever it is to put you in the zone to just think and sketch. When I was doing this, I mean, I had a big smile on my face because I like this kind of stuff. It reminded me of my high school days reading this book, and I also like where the design was going. So you're just totally in a blissful mood, and that's where you want to be at. Okay, even though it's high stress, you have to figure out to draw, but you want to be enjoying this process, because the more I get done here, I just know that I got everything else done already. Day 2 and day 3 is pretty much a breeze at this point, because I'm not going to be stressed out. I'm not going to be like, oh man, what do? I don't know what to do for this drawing. Oh, I apologize for that. My dog is barking out there. So anyways, so at this point, I'm quite enjoying this this process here. Okay, I kind of went back in and just fixed up the second drawing there, even though I'm probably not going to use this, but might as well fix it up a bit just to see where it'll go. Because the beauty of a thumbnail is that it's fast. So these 4 sketches here in real time took about an hour to do. So in the 5 hours time, you can imagine doing up to 10 to 15 of these in the morning time. But I'll never do that many. That's kind of overkill for thumbnails. So what I mean by the 5 hours efficiency is you have plenty of time to think this through, but you don't need to go for high numbers. You don't have to have a lot of thumbnails. You want to go for good design. Okay, so if it takes you a lot of designs to get there, be it. But if you get to a good design by your second drawing, that's good too. Then you can move on to phase 2 of day 1. Okay, but the goal here is to keep drawing. Okay, the more you draw, the faster you become, and the more confident you become. So all right, so here I'm just adding a little bit of detail. And this part here, I'm really relaxing because the design's kind of there. Obviously, it's a side view, so I don't know what it looks like in 3D yet, but I sort of know what's going on. So now I'm using these little details to relax my brain just a bit to get it ready for phase 2, in which I gotta put this design in a 3D view. Because unfortunately, side view drawings are pretty hard sells to clients. You can't show everything in side view because they don't know what's going on either. So, but it is a good time to kind of relax at this point to think about what it will be when I protrude it into a 3D image. Okay, so I'm doing a quick marker wash. So my goal here is just to get this to look okay for myself. If nobody looks at it, that's fine. And generally, I don't show this to anybody. This is just for yourself. Okay, but a quick color wash, and also I think this builds confidence by having a drawing that or a design that you like. You build a lot of confidence going into the second phase of this drawing. So by putting a little bit of marker on here, just shows to yourself mainly that, okay, I've done it. Okay, I'm done with this phase. It looks pretty cool. I like the designs. I'm a little bit more relaxed now. So let's go into phase 2. So this part is almost done as we go into phase 2. Okay, so here I'm gonna pick the design I like, which is the third drawing I've done. And we're gonna put this into perspective. So since this drawing this is still part of day 1. So this is basically the second part of day 1. This is 3 p.m. to your 7 p.m. now. Got about 4 hours time. So here I'm gonna take this thumbnail and bring it into a 3D view. Okay, and I'm doing this just pure by eyeball here. Just some basic perspective lines, but there's no 3D being used here. It's all just freehand. And that's fine, because remember, day 1, the drawing here is not to show anybody. This is for you. So if you're day 2, you already have this in a pretty nice state, you could build this out in 3D, right? At least a rough 3D, and that doesn't take too long, especially for a building. You could probably build this in a matter of a few hours or so. So then you have another day and a half to flush it out with a nice line drawing. So that's why I don't really need this part to be in a nice perspective or a nice perfect 3D. A roughed out eyeballed version is fine. Okay, because here I'm still trying to solve some design issues, because side views is easy, but bring this into 3D, I gotta figure out, okay, where exactly are these forms existing relative to each other. Okay, you'll see me adjusting the back house, the little tower, quite a bit, because I have a chimney in front. As you can see in the side view there's a chimney. So that chimney starts to block out this form. I like this back house, but the chimney cuts it directly in half, and I did not like that. So, because remember, this is your drawing. You don't have to stick 100% to your side view. Nobody sees these, so you could adjust them as you go. So if I don't like the way it looks like in here in 3D, I would just move it, and you'll see me doing that pretty soon as I cut it up in Photoshop and just move it. Yeah, here it goes. Okay, I'm gonna start moving the chimney to the left to clear out the way of this little house, the little tower. Okay, so here just drawing, sketching, figuring things out. This part still is a little bit of brain stuff, but a lot of it is mechanical at this point. It's just getting the secondary details. Remember what we talked about in the second phase of day 2, which is trying to figure out all your major details. Okay, the beams, in this case, where the plants are going, where the chimneys are located. You're not doing the refined details, but you pretty much got about 70 to 80% of the most important stuff done. Okay, and remember the goal here is to, before the end of the day, we have a usable design for day 2 and day 3. And also at this point, you can even show it to someone if you want. This is the showable sketch here. So if you're working with the art director, they could come over and take a look. If you're working with classmates, they could help you a little bit and tell you if the design was good or not. Okay, so this is the way I prefer to work, and I've been using this for the last 20-something years, this kind of pipeline. I find it to be most efficient for myself. And also by getting the sketches out of the way early on, I don't have to waste my energy every day thinking about design. Okay, so because as you guys know, from Monday to Fridays, you want to get all your stressful stuff just out of the way on Monday and Tuesdays, and the rest of the week, as it goes towards Friday, you want to just relax that stress level down. Okay, so for myself, I'd rather get everything just out of the way on the Mondays and Tuesdays. All right, so here we are drawing some trees. So this shape I like. Okay, I like where this is going. I think this is definitely usable. And also consider this is done in 1 day's time. So here, this entire fast forward took about 4 hours, right? So we're still basically by lunchtime we already have this done. So essentially I could fit another design here if I wanted to before the day 1. So I could have maybe 2-3 of these. But for you guys practicing, you don't have to work this fast, okay? Your goal is just to get a nice design done at end of day 1, okay? So I know I was not going to talk about procrastination, all that, but some tips here. As you do this, just concentrate. Notice I don't take a break out here. I'm not going to websites. I'm not listening to, for example, let's play video games. I'm trying to concentrate. So I am listening to music when I'm doing this, because music doesn't distract me, but I'm not listening to the news. I'm not chatting with anybody, and that's just self-control. Okay, procrastination is pretty dangerous if you don't know how to control it, and that actually hurts a lot of students because they're not concentrating on their work. But I mentioned this numerous times. If you rather do something else, like play games and be on social media, then maybe doing concept art is not something you really want to do, right? Because for me, when I'm doing this, I love it. I don't want to do anything else. I like the sketch. It's fun. Okay. All right. So here I'm doing a second drawing of this. So this is based on thumbnail number 4. It's pretty similar to number 3, but I just want to test it out real quick in 3D since I got plenty of time. So might as well use that to just punch this guy out also in a 3 perspective to see what it look like. All right. So if I was running out of time, for example, or this is a real project, I'll probably abandon this one. I wouldn't go this far. I would just use the sketch I already have and bring that to a manageable finish for day 1 and wrap it up from there. But since it's a demo for you guys, might as well go through and show it to you. All right. So I'm starting to think what to do for the next episode. This is a pretty quick episode. I think it's going to go under an hour here, just a quick one to guide you guys on some basic time management. But maybe I'll go back to design for 106. So also doing these sketches are quite fast for me. So even though I was recording this episode, I thought, hey, maybe I'll do a little bit more of these kind of things, because if I don't have to finish anything, we're doing any kind of line work, we're doing any kind of photo things, or 3D, it's much faster because it's all real time essentially. So maybe we'll do some of that if you guys like these kind of sketches. You know, do some maybe vehicles and those so forth. We'll see. I don't know. It all depends on how much time I have. All right. So this design, you can see, is pretty similar to the one I just done. But it's worth a try, because remember, design is about as many ideas as you possibly get in the shortest amount of time. So sometimes you find that by exploring the design, you have a better solution. Yeah, because this one has a little bridge, so I want to see, like, does that add a lot of element to this or not? Yeah. All right, little chimney here, a rustic thing. So you probably notice I don't have the references here at all. Because for something like this, it's pretty standard fare, at least for this little farmhouse. So what I generally do is I look at the references, I kind of memorize it in my head for a couple of seconds, and as I draw, I could kind of flash back to those images and see it. But if you have a second screen, obviously you could throw those references on board. But here, I don't need to do that because I kind of have those references already memorized. All right. So I just laid out the page a little bit, so this way when we print this out at A3, it still looks nice. I'm still pretty old school. I like to see things printed out on paper and put it on a wall. So I always kind of arrange my page to look nice as a print. So, and some art departments still do that, especially in the film industry. They like to put stuff up on walls. So we got to make sure that when they print this out, it's eating up as much canvas space as possible, so it looks big on the print. Yeah. And also fill the page out so it looks nice, so you don't have a drawing like in a corner or something. All right. All right, so sketching, some line weight. So at this point, the stress level is really pretty low. Okay, this is about 2 hours in real time, and the lower right farm, I'm like, okay, that works. You know, especially for a day 1 image, that's pretty okay. We could go with that design. So therefore, stress drops completely. And I think for students especially, if you could find that sweet spot in which you could get designs out as early as possible, you'll find that as you go forward, it gets easier and easier. The difficult thing to do is always trying to find a design while you're trying to finish and the time is running out. And that's what kills a lot of students in terms of the final output. They run out of time because the early stage planning wasn't there. So, and I think I repeated this many times already on this episode, right? The first few days, or the first day, essentially, the first few hours, critical in establishing the rest of this project. So, and this is our career. This is concept art. Concept art is quite different from, say, your standard illustration, in which you're refining a single image to finish. And even though there's thumbnails, there's roughs, and all that in the illustrative industry, in concept art, heavy output is quite important. That means a lot of stuff in a short amount of time. The clients are not buying a single image; they're buying as many ideas as possible. So, and that's why we have these pipelines to just produce a ton of work. So, like this farm, for example, this could be one of 20 before it gets approved. So, and that makes time management critical in the line of work we do. All right, so I'm just going to take this, right? This is still part of day 1. So again, this episode, we're only going to talk about day 1 stuff. So this will be the afternoon now. We take the rough drawing that we just done and just clean it up a little bit. Enough that when I come in the office on day 2, I could, for example, if I want to build this in 3D, I have enough of information that I don't have to rethink about anything, right? I could straight jump into, say, SketchUp or whatever software you're using and start mocking this up in 3D. But if you want to clean this up in a line drawing, I also have done pretty much about 60-70% of the work already. So do an overlay and just slow it down. And you have, for example, 2 days, right? You have 2 days to clean this up. That's plenty of time to do a tight line work, plenty of time to even do a color wash on there, put some photo textures, plenty of time. So same for 3D. If you're going to do a 3D, you have about a day's time to mock all this up, which should be enough time. And then you have a whole other day left to do whatever you want on top of 3D, a line drawing, do some photo painting on top. It's all fine. So in the day one, really the goal here is to solve all the problems for yourself. Okay, all the forms, anything you don't understand. And the goal here really is not to show this again to anybody. It's just for you. Yeah. So whatever it takes. The drawing doesn't have to be this nice. Okay, it doesn't have to be in really good fundamentals either. But obviously, the better you could make the drawing, the more useful this will become later down the line. Because this drawing here, even though I did not use 3D to block it out, I didn't even use a perspective grid. This is completely eyeballed. But I think the perspective is okay enough that if I wanted to clean this up as a line drawing and make it tighter, I could probably use this as a base. It'll be fine. Yeah. But these days, most likely this will go into 3D first, just to get the proportions balanced out one more time. But that's what day 2 is for. Okay. So here, just drawing the trees. Quite a bit of fun. The stress level just through the hours goes lower and lower and lower, and the fun goes higher and higher and higher. So the beginning of this drawing, remember the first sketch we done, that kind of the standard European farmhouse looking thing? At that point, the stress was super high because that design was pretty boring. It was pretty standard. It was very grounded, right? There was no playfulness in it, and your brain just telling you, "Oh man, this first drawing sucks. This first design sucks." But you work it out. You can continue doing it, and then by now, this design I like where it's going. So therefore, the fun factor comes in. And the more fun you're having, the more relaxed your arm's going to be. So this business really, you got to just do a lot of this work to get into that zone. And the only way to get there is to practice this over and over again. And you will one day get to that point where you're actually having fun doing this. I know for a lot of students, doing this is still stressful. They're not 100% enjoying it probably, right? Because they have to make sure it's done well and stuff. But you spend a few years in this business, this part of it becomes quite enjoyable. Okay. All right, let me see if I can mention anything else about time management things. So some tips I give to our students, things to prevent yourself from procrastinating is for example, don't install games on your work machine. Okay, so my machine here that I'm doing work on has no distractions. There's no games on there, there's no apps, there's nothing. And even for things like social media, like Facebook, Twitter, and all these links, I hide the bookmarks under a couple of trees. So I don't have a quick link. So I cannot just click one button. On Chrome, if you use Chrome or I guess Safari, you can actually have your bookmarks as very quickly accessible by burying them in a bunch of trees. So that prevents me from just one click into social media, right? Those are the things I prevent myself from doing to keep myself concentrating. Because, like everybody else, we all like to procrastinate. It's fun to do something else sometimes, right? Just kind of, I'm gonna take a break. But that break could equal to 10 minutes, maybe half an hour of doing nothing. So when I'm working on this drawing in particular here, I didn't do anything but do this drawing. I didn't go to social media or look at anything. So, and that does take discipline. So that's something that you have to work on your own to find the best way to prevent yourself from doing other things. Okay. So, but I am listening to music this whole time. So I got to figure out a way to sketch with you guys in real time and keep myself in concentration. I guess we'll give it a try. I've been toying around with the idea for quite a while now, which is to do some live streaming and just have that recorded. So therefore, the drawing is done and the demo is done, and also the episode essentially is recorded as well, and we could just play that back on YouTube. So that's something I might experiment with one of these days. So I've been wanting to do that for a long time now, which is to live record something and have a couple of people watching. Or maybe nobody, but whatever it is, at least you have something done. Okay. So this sketch here is almost coming to an end, maybe another few minutes here. So in real time, this one took about another hour and a half to clean up. So again, this whole process here took about 4 hours from the first sketch you saw to now. So right now I compressed this down to about 50 or 40 minutes, right? So we're talking about an 8 to 9x speed up on the video. Okay. But 4 hours is still pretty good. So this drawing here, by lunchtime, you already have it. So if you wanted to, you could do another one for the afternoon. Yeah. And this is quite presentable. This sketch here is showable-ish, even though it's still a little rough. Yeah. So little details, for example, door hinges, window designs, little carvings, you could leave that for day 2 and day 3. In day 1, I don't want to slow myself down on those little things, right? So these are all your secondary and your first level details, your big forms. Okay, the 3rd to 4th to 5th level details, save it for later, because you want to have all your forms done first. Don't slow it down on those tiny things. Those are saved for later. And also big forms, like for example in this case, this drawing here, if your art director suddenly changed their mind and go, you know what, we've got to move forward this forearm design today, they could use this, right? And we can always figure out the details later. So you always want to be in a stage where you could push this design forward without having to explain things, right? So if you imagine you only done details, you only did a door, even though it's well done, but you don't have the entire design out. Well, that door is not usable at this stage. You cannot push that design forward. Whereas this one, the design could move forward. You can essentially give this to a 3D artist at this point, and they can still build things out of it. So that just helps production to keep everything moving smoothly ahead. Okay. All right, so a few more details here. All right. Oh, one of these days, by the way, I'll try to do a Q&A as well. I've already gathered all the questions. I just have to record the episode. We'll see. So things are getting a little bit better here as the lockdown winds down and pre-pro stuff start to come to a slowdown. I should be able to find a little bit more time in the rest of the year to record at least a few more episodes, I hope. All right. Not much changes here, just adding little dots, little details, but I'm also using this time to think. Right? I think I mentioned this in the previous episodes. When I'm doing these little details, sometimes it's just for my brain to think about how am I going to finish this, where the details going to go, because now this stuff is brainless work. All right. So now just adding a marker wash like the previous ones. So at least I know where the major forms are going to go, or because it adds shadow information, and shadows keep things easier to read. So again, this is done for myself. So this way, if this was a real project and I come in the next day, I don't have to think very hard, okay? Because everything's kind of figured out for me already. I know where the overhangs are. I know where the shadows, I guess the form turns are. So all that the marker does is push those forms out for me. So it makes it easier to understand the drawing when you come to it fresh on the next day. All right. So when this drawing comes to an end, what I'll do is I'll probably go back to real time and bring this up in Photoshop just to show you how to clean this up a tiny bit for presentation, just in case you want to show this at the end of day 1. Because some art directors, if they don't trust you, they'll probably check on you on day 1. So you want to make sure that this is also checkable, even though in real world, I don't show things like this to clients because it's kind of rough. Okay. But if you have an art director that insists on checking any stuff, then you want to make it look nice as well. So that means putting some notes. That means filling in the upper left corner there, right? Because it's all empty. So we could put some, maybe the side view drawing there. We'll do that in real time in a second here. This part is almost done. Okay. And a little bit of white highlights, and we are there. And this is basically our end of day 1. Okay. All right, so let me stop the video here. I think pretty much this is done. All right, so we're back in real time. So I'm just gonna open up that last image we done, and also kind of open up everything, I guess, so we can see what our end result is at the end of day 1. So that's one, that's the other one, right? All right, so here's the page of thumbnails that started our day. So ideally that'll be done by morning time. This one as well by morning time. So figure out your design, figure out what it looks like in 3D, and this is something you want before you go home on day 1, you have a figured out rough sketch. Okay, pretty rough, but everything is there. So let me just finish this off real quick. Let me see, maybe I'll put this side view drawing here. So I'll cut and paste this guy here. Copy, okay, we'll put it here. Just use that to fill in this corner here. So that way it looks kind of nice. Let's turn that to black and white so we're on the same tone here. Make it a little bit darker. Good enough. Delete some of this stuff out. Okay, let's make it full screen. And we'll add some notes to it. It's always a good idea to write what this is for. Could write it here. Photos farm. We'll call this a rough. We'll call it V1. And good enough. Okay, so this is something that you'll walk away with at the end of day 1. So I'm not going to go and do on day 2 and day 3 because you've seen plenty of videos on that, which is a cleanup or 3D or presentation. But today's episode really is about trying to reach this goal for all your projects early on. And if you're trying this at home, do this one time, do another one after you're done, and do another one, or you can even just keep trying your day 1 stuff. Okay, just get to this stage, which is something I should have just mentioned earlier, I guess. If you're just practicing to design, you can actually end it at this stage, move on to another design, get it to this stage. So every day you're producing something, get into that zone, and maybe you could do basically 5 day ones, right, in a week. So Monday you're doing this, Tuesday you're doing a different design, Wednesday you're doing a different design, and by Friday you might have 4 or 5 of various designs presented to about this level. And then you can use the rest of the next week or the week after to flush all your 5 designs out. So that's a different way to work, but similar in terms of how it flows, right? So hopefully this episode helped you guys a little bit, and also for our students watching, start applying this for your work so you can see some cool stuff on the walls, all right? So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in episode 106. This is Feng Zhu signing out. Bye-bye.